But that brings me to my next email from John. See, I can give his name because he's not going to get threatened about anything. But John is from the Harrisonburg, Virginia area, at least, because he said that he caught a WCW show in Harrisonburg back in probably 1990. He said, I would have been around 12 years old. Anyway, he had a question. He said, that night, Ron Simmons, working as a babyface, was making his way to the ring, and a fan at the guardrail started mouthing off to Ron. Ron stopped and exchanged some words with the fan. The fan then proceeded to spit in Ron's face. Ron, in the blink of an eye, jerked this fan over the guardrail and proceeded to shoot on him with rapid punches until the fan was bloody and wobbly. The Harrisonburg police officers in attendance helped the fan to his feet and then took him out in handcuffs to the paramedics and probably jail after that, I'm assuming. A lot of people said it was a work and the fan was a plant. But being a lifelong fan of 40 plus years, I've never been able to make sense of that. What would a babyface Ron Simmons have to gain by beating the shit out of a fan unless he was trying to turn heel? He still had his match that night, worked as a babyface. Jim, you were there that night with the Midnight Express. I was just wondering if you have any memory of this or memories of Harrisonburg, Virginia. Well, first of all, that I can see that happen, and I didn't see it, but I can see it in my mind's eye, and that tickled me just to read that. You know, to be honest, that was the dark last year of WCW. Hence, that's why we were at Harrisonburg High School with a national television show and a fucking touring company of wrestlers making six figures a year. And we're doing shows at the Harrisonburg High School. But at that point in time, I can pretty much assume that me, Bobby, and Stan were all sitting in the locker room engaging in some kind of misery, just waiting until our time was, the bell would ring and we could go so we could get the fuck out of there and get back to Charlotte, right?
When did you say this was? Because babyface Ron Simmons would have been before Doom, so this is 89?
Yeah, well, probably 89 or 90-ish. Anytime after
no, it had to be before then, because Ron Simmons was a heel from mid-89 on.
Okay, but then that means earlier in 89, TBS still owned the company.
Yeah. It could have been the end of 88 or 89. That's the only time it could have been.
Okay. Well, you know better than John because he was 12 years old. What 12-year-old remembers anything?
I was 9.
But but you've studied since. He's had a real life.
I study.
But you study so you can learn. You never stop learning, Brian. As you study all this stuff.
It's just sad you don't want to learn.
The point being, it's sad to say I don't even remember Ron coming back and saying, oh yeah, I punched the shit out of this guy. But no, if you spit in Ron Simmons' face where he's a baby face or a heel or in a goddamn coma, you're getting, quote unquote, what was it? Rapid punches until you're bloody and wobbly. But that's the thing at Harrisonburg, because I have different memories. Crockett actually ran Harrisonburg, Virginia in the Crockett days, and it was like everything else. Somebody said, well, everything drew in those days, and it did. And then, unfortunately, that's where a lot of the WCW shows ended up, as we've talked about, after TBS took over, in that they had blown the house show market just completely up, and nobody was coming to the big towns. They were going to smaller towns around the Southeast, and there's no way to make money because of the money they were paying the guys that were, versus what you could conceivably expect to do in Harrisonburg, Virginia, right? Even if you were hot. But then in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, talking about Harrisonburg stories, this is an example of when you have the right local promoters, we've been talking about local promoters. We've done the wrestling history segments lately. You could have made something of that area in Virginia because there were wrestling fans, but you need the right people to put the shows together from all aspects of it. And in Smoky Mountain, we got, oh God, Channel 3 is what it was in Harrison, based out of Harrisonburg, Virginia. That's a part of Virginia that's not anywhere really around Norfolk or Hampton, but it is farther east and north than Richmond. And it's not quite as far as whether it could be suburban Washington, D.C., right? So it's a nice television station there that serves a wide area of that central Virginia or whatever they call it, that part of the state. And we got TV there, and the TV station was, very easy to work with. And we ran a couple of Smoky Mountain shows up there, but the problem was for us, it was 300, depending on whether you were living in Knoxville or Morristown, it was between, I think, like 325 and 350 miles away, straight through Virginia up the interstate. And it was its own television market. So it's not like there was any overlap with anything else that we were doing down there. And we ran it a couple times, but just with the local group, I can't even remember now, don't have my notes in front of me, at the school sponsoring us, you could do 300 or 400 people or 500 people or whatever. But what we could, and it wasn't really, by the time you lug that ring 600 miles up the goddamn interstate and back, and all the boys have gone as far north in the territory as possible just for one show, it wasn't worth it. You needed to get 2 or 3 shows on a weekend in a market like that. And that's where a guy that lived there locally would have come in handy. A guy that knew and that's why all the Fuller family and the Welches and all these used to be sent to all these different places all over the South because they knew the business. They knew how and where to hustle people and what stores to go to poster and papers, publicity. They'd get the ins with the radio station. And then you find in your television, coverage area that goes 70 miles in any direction from Harrisonburg, Virginia, you find 2 or 3 towns you can run once every couple months on a weekend and draw 500 people apiece. And then you got something on a territory basis put together. And that's what we had in Eastern Kentucky and in East Tennessee. But, that was out in the wilderness like that. Remember Dennis Chestnut in Barberville, Kentucky was a town gadabout, owned Chestnut's tax service, but liked to raise money for the Knox Central High School sports teams there. And when he took that fucking town, we drew between 750 and 1,000 people once a month in Barberville, Kentucky, which I think was the population. You've been there once, at least 5,000 people. I don't know.
I was there twice.
But anyway, with Harrisonburg, he asked about Harrisonburg stories. That was another area that we were hoping to be able to exploit in Smoky Mountain. But, it was too far. It's too far away to keep an eye on for a local territory. But the last time that I went to Harrisonburg, it's me, it's Brian Hildebrand, Mark Curtis, Killer Kyle, and Jimmy Del Rey. We all rode, because it's so far up there, we all rode together, right? And when we get out of the matches, there is absolutely nothing open to get anything to eat except Denny's, because this is 30 years ago. So, all right, well, we're starving. Before we go 6 hours, it's going to be just worse. We get on the interstate in the middle of the night. We'll go to Denny's. We'll wait 20, 30 minutes, hopefully, for food. We'll eat. We'll get out of here. We sit there. We order everything on the menu you can imagine. And Kyle could eat better than me. And I swear to God, we've been sitting there about 20 or 30 minutes. And just when I'm starting to think, is the food ever going to come? Here comes the waiter. But this bumblefuck, think about this, Brian. All four of us, and we're starving, and we're going to be driving for the next 6 hours. So we've ordered a lot of food, right? They didn't send 2 or 3 people out carrying shit, or they didn't send a wheelie cart carrying shit or rolling shit. They sent this one fucking guy with about 8 dinners on this giant tray, and he literally gets within 10 feet of us and turns sideways to try to go around a chair on the other table and pitched that thing over his shoulder right at our fucking feet. Every fucking burger and steak and sandwich and fry and sauce and fucking. And we just looked at it for a second. I said, is that ours? And they said, oh, please bear with us. We'll fix this up right away. I said, you're going to start it from scratch. It just took half an hour. We got to go 300 miles. So we had to, and then not only they started from scratch again, but now it smells, they're scraping it up right next to us. And it smells so good. And I'm like, wait, stop. Did that touch the floor yet? And, so that's my last time I was in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Officially, I've driven through there a couple times since then.
What was everyone else's reaction when all of a sudden this guy? Did you guys see it coming? Did you see like this guy?
They weren't having. Well, no, see it coming.
Did you see like, oh, this guy's got a problem here before he went down?
No, see it coming. Well, here was the goddamn scene where it's the middle of let's say 11:15 or 11:30 in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We're the only ones in this fucking place practically. And we're sitting around this table, and if they can see us, it's Killer Kyle, it's me in my striped Zubaz, Jimmy Del Rey, who stood out like a sore thumb, and poor Brian. And so as we're sitting there, and we're the only occupants of anything for 20 feet around, here comes this guy carrying what looks like the goddamn Grinch's sled going up Mount Crumpet. So we saw it coming like they saw the tanks and fucking the streets in goddamn Germany. And we're watching him as he's coming. And I was like, is this a good idea? And then he's going into this giant open area next to us. All he has to do is step around this one fucking chair. And he turned his hip went sideways. And the fucking thing went over his shoulder.